All right, added the swamp cooler onto the forklift. You can kind of see the premise there. That board is good. The board that it sits on gives you shade. It also allows me to bolt down that cooler. So we got these two straps here that hold this big flat board down, and those screw into these boards here, which you can see surround the base of the cooler and thus captivate it. Obviously we've got a strip of plumber's tape on it to stop it from falling off when it bounces. Here's the cord. Comes in here to a 300 watt inverter. That swamp cooler, the water pump only works on high, so that's a little disappointing, but I just flipped it to high. 2 amps, so at 120 volts, that's 240 watts, 300 watt inverter. There you go, Bob's your auntie. Got a couple wires down here. One of them, there's a stud on the back of the alternator that says ground. I bolted that on there, and then the other one, you know, there's that loose, when you buy the universal positive cable, there's the loose one. I crimped it in there. So you shut off the inverter. It'll drain my battery ever so slightly because of the bleed resistor for the capacitor. It's such a microscopic draw, I don't think it super matters. And this, you know, you can actually see the water level on the front. Let me show you that. This is an old dryer part on the blower assembly for the dryer. The motor would go right there where the silver tape is. I just taped over the hole, and yeah, that gave me a pretty nice angle. This, it was not a sharp enough bend, so I put a longener in there, and it was longer here, and I wrapped it around one of these poles, and I bent it a little bit higher, so now it's blowing in my face. Cut off the extra length. I got it adjusted, blowing at my face through a screw in there. Just designed to have a screw on it. Oh yeah, I was going to show you the water level. So that's this fella right here. That's that little cork. It's floating, so you'll actually be able to, I used a rock auto magnet to keep this lid shut, because of gravity, it just wants to pop open like gravity does that, and I don't want leaves falling in there because I don't want it, you know, rotting or producing any sort of odor or anything if you let water sit in it. Yeah, I was just going to fill it. You know, I have the nozzle on my garden hose here. That fella there, you turn it to jet, and then you spray it at the pad on the back of the cooler, and you just spray it there for a minute, and it takes a minute or two, and bingo bongo, you fill it up. And you can see here, this is when I sit here. Maybe I'll get you a far away view, but yeah, look, it's right about my face. And you see the mast is very thick, and so I kind of lined this up. See the steering wheel? The premise being this obstructs my vision of the mast, which you can see I can pretty well see past it. You know, I couldn't see good to begin with, so it does not really obstruct my vision anything too bad. And so yeah, just flip the power switch on the inverter, and that's how you turn it on. I'll even do it here for a second with the forklift off, so that yeah, you know, the alternator on the forklift won't be running, but you'll be able to hear it. I hope you can hear that. And obviously, see if you get any wind noise on the mic from that. And actually I have one of these boys. It is a little bit breezy out here. Yeah, it's actually very breezy. The second I pull out the rag, it gets breezy, but as you can see, it is running. Very cute. Now, perhaps you can see, it kind of comes pretty well when I sit and I recline. Yeah, and then just from the top here, was blowing a lot of air out of that, so I taped that first. And was not a lot of air coming out this side, so I put these, you know, kind of small pieces, because I was getting some air at the top and the bottom, but these vents that are kind of straight, they direct the air pretty well, so not a lot of air leakage there, just a little bit. On this side, this only took 2 strips. Whoops. So I just filled it all in completely, because it didn't take that much tape. I don't know, this one, I didn't want to cover the float level. Didn't necessarily want to cover the power switch. Not that I think I'll use it, but mainly the float level. And then what am I going to do? Wrap the tape around the corner and hit on that? Maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I can afford the tape. Kind of expensive. So, yeah, you get the general idea. the other side. Not that it looks particularly different from the other side. What a cute little guy. I ought to show you the front. I don't know if you'll be able to see it with the mast, but sure, what the hell, I'll show you the front. Nope, can't see it.
Can I park it?
Yeah. And that concludes today's episode, but tune in next week. You never know, I might upload a video again.
Yeah, man. There it is. So this is super crazy dangerous. That right there is bailing the near, and we are going to do something really stupid today. It was a terrible idea. Bailing might die. It was making me uncomfortable. Go, Bailing!
You riding this?
What the fuck is happening?
Bailing said not to talk crap about this camera. It's a piece of shit.
This is so unbelievably sketchy. Why would you put me through this, you jerk?
That's the power of really old engineering.
It'd be nice if it didn't kill me. It's not required.
I felt it fucking pop.
Make a wish, everyone. Make a wish. Not okay. You went too far. This guy, man. This guy.
I got this cute little evaporative cooler. We got your switch here, low and up is high, down is low. This is your little water level. There's a cork in there. This is how you fill it with water. You can actually see, perhaps, there's your little cork that floats, shows you how much water is in the tank. This is your blower assembly, obviously, motor in there, fan. Now this was missing, you can see here's the pump impeller, still there, but I imagine this pump assembly was made out of plastic, and it is gone. So this here is what I made. And actually the first time I soldered this copper pipe on, I actually had it pointed the wrong direction. It was just a silly mistake, of course. So it would pump water, but only on the high setting and only a little bit. So I flipped it around, so now it's the correct direction with the rotation of the impeller. And the other thing I added that I didn't have before was that little scoop. That's a paint can lid, super handy. So here it's a thin sheet of steel, and you could get it, you know, for free if you get old paint can lids. So you see I cut that up over the years, and you can solder to it, which is interesting. You know, if you cut up a soda can, which is aluminum, can't solder to that. So yeah, the paint can lids you can solder to. So that should help increase my water flow. Yeah, I ought to add more of those. However, I ran into significant difficulty. If I melt the solder on this little ramp, it would generally, you know, the copper, you got to get it hot enough for the solder to stick and wet to it. Well, if the copper isn't hot enough, you know, the solder isn't wetting to it, and it's just kind of touching, but it's not sticking and bonding. So by the time you get that copper hot enough to stick to the solder, the copper's so conductive it melts this other solder, and then your little copper tube piece falls out on the ground. Part of the reason for that is since I put this in backwards and I flipped it, I think I wallered out the hole a little bit, whereas if you had it in the correct direction to begin with, it would almost be, you could have it a little bit more of a snug press into the steel and it wouldn't be so loosey-goosey. So it's real tricky, you know, solder the pipe in there, the little catch ramp falls off, so it's back and forth. So it was very difficult to get that in there, so that's why there's not more than that, but that should be good enough. The other thing is, this does have a bit of a tuna scent to it. It is a tuna can. And I figure you notice the holes in the bottom. This is hose clamped on there. The hose clamps should keep it off of the bottom, so it's not sitting flat. the hose clamp will raise it up, so you get a little bit of water flow underneath of it. It should be okay. But obviously I don't want my swamp cooler to smell like tuna. That's gross. So I did leave this in the sun for a few days, twisted it around, see if the UV light did anything. I might have washed it with a bathroom cleaner. Maybe next I'll try hand sanitizer. It's an alcohol. Just because the other thing is, the sunlight won't get up underneath that lip. So I want to get rid of all of the fish smell I absolutely can. The other thing is I have a loose piece of copper and brass rolling around in that water tank. Hopefully we get some copper and brass ions, dissolved in the water, which will help. It's a very gentle disinfectant, but it is a disinfectant. If necessary, I can always hook up a wire and electrically charge the copper. There's a cute Instructables, I think Instructables.com article on how to prevent your swamp cooler from becoming a swamp thing, or something like that is the title. And so yeah, you just have a diode and a current limiting resistor or something to that effect, and you can actually charge the copper. And the polarity is important, whether it's plating the metal or whether the metal is being kind of pushed out into solution. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, pump.